So why do you want to talk to the media? Well, really, it's all about helping other people by sharing your experiences so that people hearing your experiences or reading about them maybe recognise something about themselves. And you'll be encouraging people to take actions, big and small, that will help break down the stigma and discrimination around mental health. Don't forget, this is a pretty big thing you're doing. Be really clear that you do want to share some of your own personal details, maybe get some feedback from friends or family. And don't forget, you can always change your mind at any part of the process and tell the journalist that, after all, you don't want to be interviewed. So why does a journalist want to talk to you? Well, we're hardwired to tell stories and listen to stories. Our ancestors did it sitting around the cave fires, and we do it today by looking at the internet or looking at box sets. A journalist wants a real-life story to bring some humanity to the kind of perhaps facts and figures they're writing about, and so that their readers, viewers and listeners can recognise something about themselves or their family members in what they're reading. So how do you find a journalist to talk to? Well, it may be that your local mental health charity is already talking to the journalist, so raise your hand, contact the charity and say that you're happy to be interviewed about your experience. If you're doing this on your own, then start listening to local radio, reading local paper and magazines, and looking at online websites. Look out for journalists who are writing health stories, and in particular mental health stories. Then you need to do a bit of online sleuthing. There's usually a contact information part on every website. Find out the contact email address, send a few lines about yourself, and say that you're happy to be interviewed. Don't get discouraged if a journalist doesn't come back to you immediately. They're busy people. But if you see a big Mental Health Awareness Day come up, or you know that mental health is going to be in the national news again, try again, contact that journalist and say you're happy to talk about your story. So how do you get ready for an interview? Think about the main elements of your own story, the things that are really important to you. Maybe it's about the length of time it took to get a diagnosis, or someone or something that really helped you. Don't forget to include those in your story, but maybe tell them to the journalist again at the end so that they understand that these are the important elements of the story. Think about how you want to tell your story. Some people tell their story chronologically from childhood. Maybe they felt a bit different or something was wrong from a really early stage in their lives. Other people like to start with the most impactful part of their story, maybe the time when they felt worst. Importantly, have a think about the bits you want to leave out of your story. Maybe there are people that you don't want to name, family members, healthcare professionals, employers. Make sure that you are really clear with the journalist before you start that there are some areas that you just don't want to talk about. Are you happy to use your real name in a story and be photographed? Journalists prefer you to do both, but you don't have to. But it's important to be clear with the journalist before you do the interview if you decide not to. And finally, practice telling your story before you get in front of the journalist. Maybe tell it to a friend and get their feedback on how easy it is to understand. Or if you feel a bit awkward about that, why not record it on your phone and then show it to a friend? So here are a few interview tips. Keep calm and keep it simple, and do remember to breathe. If you're going to be filmed or recorded, ask beforehand where you should sit and where you should look, particularly if there's a camera. Avoid any jargon, 3-letter acronyms, slang or medical terms that maybe most readers, viewers and listeners won't understand. If you feel that you have to use some of these terms, then make sure you explain them clearly the first time you use them. If you hear yourself waffling on or repeating yourself quite a lot, then just stop. The journalist will ask another question. You're talking about really personal matters, but try not to get upset or offended if the journalist asks an awkwardly phrased question. They're probably really only trying to get a clear understanding about your story or your experience. Doing an interview can feel highly unnatural, and that's not surprising, so do remember to look after your own mental health through the whole process. What if things don't go as planned? Don't forget the boundaries you set for yourself and the journalist before the interview started. Don't get pushed into talking about things you've already decided you don't want to discuss. And there's no shame in saying, I don't know. Don't be tempted to make something up just to give the journalist an answer. What about after the interview? Well, first of all, ask the journalist for some feedback. Did they get what they wanted? Journalists don't have to show you the final copy or the final edit before it goes to print or air. That's not part of the deal as far as they're concerned. But a local journalist might be a bit more sympathetic, so it's always worthwhile to ask. Find out where and when your interview is going to appear. You want to be able to find it. Accept that there'll always be some minor errors in your interview. Journalists are only human after all. But if you think they've got something seriously wrong, do contact them again. They won't be able to change the print copy or something that's gone to air, but importantly, they may be able to change the online copy. And if you have no joy with this, and again I say things will have to have gone seriously wrong, then contact their editor and state your case. But if you're happy with the interview, then do let the journalist know that they've done a good job and that maybe you could be interviewed again. Don't forget, you've done a really amazing thing by sharing your story. And do remember to look after your own mental health through the whole process.